Why does a narcissist have so much rage? It just seems like he's filled with so much anger, and every time that you try to express something, he lashes out. Every time you try to express your feeling, he just like rages out at you. And you're like, I can't even share anything with him because there's so much rage there. I want to talk to you today how narcissists typically get to rage in 4 steps of where it actually leads them and why it actually becomes such a natural piece. Now, it's not that narcissists are only filled with rage. That's the thought, that's the idea. I get it. But narcissists have a lot of other feelings too: anger, sadness, happiness, frustration, irritation, depression. Like there's all different feelings and emotions built in there. I'm not just saying that narcissists only have anger, only have rage. But the thing I need you to understand is typically narcissists don't know how to be able to actually show emotions, how to be able to show feelings. A lot of times guys in general struggle with how to be able to actually share feelings, how to actually be able to show up in an emotional way. And as a result, it's easier just to get frustrated. It's easier just to have anger. Sometimes anger has so many different things underneath it. Like there's this piece of like fear, this piece of like being ashamed. There's so many different pieces that are underneath it. Oftentimes anger is not the actual problem, the actual thing, but it's a cause and it's an effect of what's actually going on underneath. So you need to understand in this aspect of anger, when a narcissist is coming out and they're looking so much rage, typically there's a couple of things that are happening. First, a narcissist typically had a moment that had some level of exposure. You asked him if he was cheating, or you tried to express your feelings and it made him feel a certain way. And typically there's this first layer of like guilt. Now, the guilt is super fast for a narcissist, and it's typically this piece of like, oh, I did something bad. Maybe I messed up, maybe I cheated, like whatever it might be. It's like the narcissist is like, okay, logically something happened that was not supposed to happen, that I was not supposed to do, right? So I did something bad. Then that piece goes quickly into number 2, which is shame. I am bad. Okay, so the thing that I did, that now defines me. Because typically narcissists are only looking at their image as being defined by what other people think about them. So what do they need to put up there? How do they need to act? What do they need to look like? All those different pieces. And so you need to understand a lot of times a narcissist is like, oh, that defines me, so therefore now I am the bad person. Okay? That goes directly against the whole premise of the mask being like, I'm a good person. Now it's like, wait a second. Now I'm not a good person. Now I'm actually a bad person. What do I do with that? So when a narcissist has this happen, typically the easiest thing is to not admit it, right? To lie. And typically in a relationship, if there's 2 people in the relationship, it's like, hey, if I can't be the one that's wrong, if I can't be the one that's bad, then it has to be you. Like it has to go to someone else. So this is where you get projecting. This is where you get blame shifting. But the whole aspect is the number 3 point is like, hey, blame. Putting the blame on you, making you feel bad. Now, what you're going to see a lot of times is the narcissist will switch around and he'll say, hey, it's your fault. And you're like, it's not my fault. Like that was your decision. And then he's like, okay, well, actually it's our fault. Like we just have communication issues. And you're going to see a switch. Now, with that switch happens, you think, okay, I can accept part of the blame. The narcissist is like, yes, she accepted part of the blame, because in his mind, you accepted all of the blame. You're like, I only accepted like 5%. Nope. In his mind, you accepted all the blame. So he's out of it. Now, the problem is, even though he wants to think that, even though he wants to believe that, it doesn't actually change his current reality that he made the decision, he did the thing that was bad, therefore he is bad, therefore he has got to blame it on someone else. And typically then it results in rage, because either you accepted the blame or you rejected the blame, and he knows that it's still his fault. So when this all comes full circle, it's like, now I have these emotions. I can't get rid of them because this person won't take them, or I know if they take them, it's still my fault. Then I get to a place of rage. So a narcissist typically is using rage as this piece of like control. Of how do I actually control you, manipulate the situation, hide from the situation, change the situation so that I'm not exposed, so that the attention's not on me, and then this negative light of me being a bad person. Ironic though, because that's when the rage is making him a bad person, right? Like rage isn't this nice, fluffy, warm, cuddly, nice thing. And so a narcissist is like, what do I need to do? In the moment, there's not really a thought. In the moment, it's like, okay, I feel shame. So what am I going to do? Rage. I feel anger. So what am I going to do? Rage. I feel like exposed. What am I going to do? Rage. I feel fearful. What am I going to do? Rage. And so there's this aspect that has to happen, and that had to happen in my life, of like reparenting emotions. Reparenting emotions, because there would be this anger, this rage of like, I don't know what's going on. And then getting underneath, figuring out what's actually underneath the surface. So I had this opportunity where I was working through this piece of like rage, like trying to figure out what is actually underneath it. Now, I had this meditation one time that walked me through this whole aspect of like rage. And then underneath the rage was this piece of fear where I was afraid of what the truth was going to expose. And so the rage was this piece of like, let me rage out, let me get upset, let me get mad to avoid people looking at the truth. Because if the truth is down here and the rage is up here, you're only going to see the rage. You're only going to see the big stuff. And so instead, I'd be like, hey, let me rage out instead of being exposed. Now, did I logically think that? No, I'm trying to break it down for you in a different way so you understand. That's like what happens in like an instant, like a microsecond. It's like, boom, rage. Because it's like, what do I need to do to be able to avoid being held accountable, being honest, being vulnerable, showing that weakness that we talked about earlier this week? Like, what do I need to do? Oftentimes, rage. Reparenting emotions is super hard. It's like rewiring your brain on every single level of being able to actually put other words to emotions. Like I still struggle to be able to say, okay, these are all the emotions out there, right? Like I'll pull up like an actual like wheel and be like, okay, what emotion am I feeling, to try to figure it out? Because otherwise it's like this piece where I'm like, it's hard for me to be able to figure it out. It's hard for me to be able to pinpoint it. Because a lot of times I would only view like happiness, anger, sadness, right? Like those are the basic ones. That's it. But those would typically turn out into rage because I was afraid of being exposed. And so this is why narcissists have so much rage, is because they're living this double life. They're living this fake life. What you see out there actually isn't real. And they're afraid if you actually expose, let me rage out. So you're going to see this over and over. Does your narcissist have a lot of rage in his life?